Four Nations February, a road-heavy March, and the final push in April. Let's wrap up our schedule preview for 2024-25.
You're Locked On Bruins, your daily podcast on the Boston Bruins, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Bruins fans, and welcome back to the Locked On Boston Bruins podcast. I'm your host, Ian McLaren, and this is a daily show where we discuss all things Spoke to Be. Today is Friday, July 26th, and I want to thank you so much for making Locked On Bruins part of your daily routine. Free and available on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. We've done it. We've reached Friday. The weekend is upcoming. The Olympics start today. Something other than baseball to watch on your sports schedule. And we are wrapping up our preview of the 2024-25 Boston Bruins schedule. We discussed earlier this week how October is going to be a gauntlet, much more difficult than last season, and how it's going to be incumbent on Joonas Korpisalo to contribute early on. November is going to be a bit emotional with the returns of Jake DeBrusk and Linus Ullmark, with the visits of the Ottawa Senators and Vancouver Canucks. We've got the holidays covered yesterday by looking at December and January, and today we're going to wrap up this series by checking out February, March, and April. Before we get into it, a quick reminder, you can find the podcast on social media at Locked NHL Bruins, and you can find me, my hockey thoughts, and dad jokes at Ian C. McLaren. Now, the month of February 2025 features only 7 games played by the Boston Bruins. That's because there will be an extended break in the middle of the month. That will be for the Four Nations face-off. Before they get to that, they will host the New York Rangers on February 1st, a matinee game, 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Then they will get a couple days off before hosting the Minnesota Wild. A back-to-back. The next night, they'll go to New York to take on the Rangers, and then they will wrap up the first half of February by hosting Bruce Cassidy, Jack Eichel, and the Vegas Golden Knights on Saturday, February 8th. Always interesting when Bruce Cassidy comes back to town. The Golden Knights are a bit of a different team coming into this season, having lost Jonathan Marchessault. Of course, they added Noah Hannafin. Always a competitive squad, and those could be 4 pretty tough games to open February for the Bruins. Obviously, the Rangers are the reigning President's Trophy winners. The Wild have some good young players. I expect Matt Boldy to have a big season for them. Marco Rossi should emerge as well. Philip Gustafson maybe with a rebound in net. And then, of course, you have the Golden Knights, who, despite having traded Logan Thompson to the Capitals, they still have Adin Hill, still have Jack Eichel, Mark Stone, if he's not on his yearly stint on LTIR leading up into the playoffs. Some good players on that squad, and that should be a banger. Now, there's a break in the schedule from February 9th until the 21st, and that is because of the Four Nations face-off, which will be hosted in Boston and in Montreal, and will feature Canada, USA, Finland, and Sweden. Not taking part is the reigning world champion Czechs. Of course, our boy David Pastrnak, as well as Pavel Zacha, are prominent Czech players in the NHL on the Boston Bruins. And it's a real shame that they will not be participating in this tournament on home ice. Even if you look at Slovakia, who used to be a power, they are represented by an up-and-coming superstar in Juraj Slafkovský. It would have made too much sense to extend this to a Six Nations Cup and have Boston playing games, the Czechs playing games in Boston, the Slovaks playing games in Montreal to feature those two superstar players on their respective teams. As it stands, we have Brad Marchand, who will represent Team Canada. Charlie McAvoy will be representing Team USA. That's all we know so far for Bruins participants in this tournament. Jeremy Swayman could get a nod in net for Team USA. There could be some Swedes on the team as well. Perhaps Elias Lindholm, Hampus Lindholm. We do not have any indication yet as to whether either of those guys will be there, but I would expect that both could be on the team for Sweden. Both of those Lindholms. Elias, I should add, given number 28 by the Bruins. Hampus is number 27, so they got in a row. Linus Ullmark probably will be on that team as well, but of course he is no longer a member of the Boston Bruins, unfortunately. Patrice Bergeron, if he was still around, likely would have been there as well, but Canada will be represented likely by one Bruin, that being Brad Marchand. When it comes to Team USA, McAvoy, probably, hopefully, Jeremy Swayman. And then when it comes to Team Finland, I don't believe there will be any Boston Bruins on there, as the Bruins are sans Finns. Tuukka Rask, of course, being the most recent prominent Boston Bruin. So we'll probably have, a handful of Bruins in the mix. Their best player will not be, which is a real shame. And I've talked about that in the past, how the NHL missed the boat on not having David Pastrnak playing for Czechia on his NHL home ice. Now, after that tournament, the Bruins will be back in action with 3 home games to round out the month of February. They will host the Ducks on February 22nd, which is a Saturday night tilt. They will have a couple days off before hosting the Maple Leafs, 7 p.m. Eastern on Tuesday, February 25th. And then they will host the New York Islanders on Thursday, February 27th to end the month, which will lead into a very road-heavy March schedule. And we'll touch on that here as the podcast continues. It's shaping up to be a beautiful weekend, and it's a prime time to go check out a Major League Baseball game near you. And the best place to get tickets is Game Time, an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball. They make getting tickets faster and easier. They have amazing last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and a low price guarantee. So Game Time takes all the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. I love the view from your seat. You know exactly what to expect when you get to the stadium, and they have all-in pricing, which means no hidden fees. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply, but again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. It's not just for baseball either. You can get concerts, comedy, theater near you, and all you have to do is download Game Time today and get last-minute tickets at the lowest price, guaranteed. Thank you so much once again for making Locked On Bruins part of your daily routine, free and available on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. While you're on YouTube, check out Locked On Sports Today, free 24/7 streaming channel featuring all the latest news, opinions, and analysis from across the Locked On universe. Available on YouTube, 24/7, as well as on the Amazon Fire TV channels app. So we looked at the 7 games the Bruins will play in February, interrupted by the Four Nations face-off. In the month of March, the Bruins will play a grand total of 4 home games. They will be on the road for, I believe, 10 road games. 1, 2, 4, 5. Yep, 10 games on the road, only 4 at home. A very unbalanced schedule, and that will be a pretty challenging month as they look to secure a playoff spot, maybe jockey for positioning in the Atlantic Division and in the Eastern Conference. So who's on the schedule? Well, they'll begin 3 p.m. Eastern Time, Saturday afternoon game against the Pittsburgh Penguins in Pittsburgh, of course. Then the next day, they will travel to Minnesota to take on the Wild. So that will be a pretty heavy back-to-back with some travel across one time zone. So you're getting 2 back-to-back matinees and losing an hour with going to Minnesota. So that will not be an easy combo. Once again, we talked about the importance of backup goaltending. Jeremy Swayman is your number 1 option. And Joonas Korpisalo is going to be called upon to take on some of these starts, some of these back-to-backs especially. And that's a weekend where they're going to need him to be on his A game. Next up after that, you have a game at home against the Nashville Predators. But then they go back on the road for 2 more games that week. So Saturday, Sunday in Pittsburgh, Minnesota. Home on Tuesday to take on the Predators, who will not be an easy out. Of course, they've added Steven Stamkos, Jonathan Marchessault, Brady Shea to go along with UC Saros, Roman Josi, Philip Forsberg. That's going to be a tough team. And then after that, they have to travel to Carolina to take the Hurricanes on the 6th. And then they will travel to Tampa to take on the Lightning, another matinee game, Saturday, March 8th. So a pretty difficult start to March, all against teams with very real playoff aspirations, 4 of 5 on the road over the first 8 days. They will get a couple days off, thankfully. They'll return home to take on the Panthers, the reigning Stanley Cup champions. That's going to be a tough one, of course. They will then go on the road to take on the Ottawa Senators and Linus Ullmark on March 13th. And then come home to take on the Tampa Bay Lightning on March 15th, a 7 p.m. Eastern start. Then they will play another game at home on March 17th against the Buffalo Sabres before heading out on a 5-game road trip, which will match the road trip that they will be on, I believe it was in December, which will take them 5 games out west. In December, they will go to Winnipeg, Seattle, Vancouver, Calgary, and Edmonton. And then here in March, they will once again go out west, but this time they will be hitting Vegas, San Jose, Los Angeles, Anaheim, and Detroit before they come home. Now, on top of that, this will feature a back-to-back scenario. They go to Vegas to take on the Golden Knights on the 20th of March. They'll be in San Jose to take on the Sharks on the 22nd. And then the quick trip downstate to take on the Kings on the 23rd. So a back-to-back situation there with one game beginning at 10:30 p.m. Eastern, the other game beginning an hour and a half earlier at 9 p.m. So a very short turnaround for the Bruins. Thankfully, they'll get a couple days off before having to take on the Ducks. They'll play the Kings on the 23rd. They don't play the Ducks until the 26th. And then they'll get a couple days to travel over to Detroit to take on the Red Wings on the 29th to wrap up the month. So again, that's 10 games on the road versus 4 at home in the month of March, 5 of which will be played, or 4 of which will be played out west, with games in Vegas, San Jose, LA, and Anaheim. There'll also be a game earlier in the month in Minnesota. There's 2 back-to-backs here, and just a very crazy month overall that could go a long way to determining whether the Bruins, remain in the playoff race and where they will finish in the Atlantic Division and in the Eastern Conference. So yeah, that's a month that could be problematic for the Boston Bruins. And don't know exactly when the trade deadline will be in 2025. I don't think we know it anyways, but it will probably fall somewhere in there, and perhaps they'll be getting some reinforcements for some of these road games as well. So that's March. The Bruins will still have 8 games remaining on the schedule through the first half of April, and we'll touch on those here as the podcast continues. Some of us who love hockey and basketball, well, the sports aren't sportsing as we would like them to. But the good news is baseball's still going strong. The WNBA is exciting to watch, and the Olympics are upon us. And right now, FanDuel is letting you keep the sports going whenever you want. All you have to do is open up the app, visit the website, and dream up bets anytime you're in the mood. On top of that, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right, there is something for everyone, every day, all summer long. Head over to FanDuel.com, start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel is an official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. And of course, the Red Sox have a big weekend series coming up against the New York Yankees. You can go to FanDuel, check out the lines there, and put some money down on the Red Sox against the Yankees. FanDuel.com. FanDuel is an official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. April, we're talking about April, the Boston Bruins schedule that month. Hopefully, they're well positioned for a playoff spot by that time. They will have 4 home games and 4 road games here to wrap up the regular season schedule, which ends on the 15th with the home game against the New Jersey Devils. Prior to that, they will play the Washington Capitals on April 1st, April Fool's Day. They will travel to Montreal for a game against the Canadiens on the 3rd. They'll be back home to host the Carolina Hurricanes on April 5th. Then they'll head out on a 2-game road trip to Buffalo and New Jersey. Now, that Buffalo game will be on Sunday the 6th. So here's another back-to-back situation with travel involved. The 5th at home against the Hurricanes, and then the 6th on the road in Buffalo. Then they'll go to New Jersey to take on the Devils on the 8th. Back home to host the Blackhawks on the 10th. A couple days off before going to Pittsburgh to take on the Penguins on the 13th. And then they wrap it up at home against the Devils. Now, the Devils were not a playoff team last year, but they should be much improved after adding Jacob Markstrom and hiring Sheldon Keefe to be their head coach. A healthy Dougie Hamilton will also help. Those could be some pretty tough games to end the season. The Capitals are improved even after making the playoffs last year, squeaking in. The Canadiens, I expect them to be near the bottom of the standings once again, but they could be improved on last season, as should the Sabres be. So there's really no easy games on this one. Maybe the Blackhawks, who are still in the midst of their building phase. So it could be a difficult end to the season for the Bruins if you add this schedule to what they will be facing in March. They're going to have to take advantage of that rest period. And maybe it's good that David Pastrnak will not be playing in the Four Nations face-off, because he's their best player offensively at the very least, and they're going to need him to be in peak form in March and April. So maybe it'll be good for him to get some extra rest there in February for when the Bruins need him most. They're going to have some other top players involved with Swayman, likely, Marchand, McAvoy, and the Lindholms. So it'll be good to have Pastrnak rested, although I'm sure he would prefer to be involved in that tournament. So that's your look at the schedule coming up. Go back if you missed the episodes on October, November, the holiday season. And I'm pretty excited about Bruins hockey now, having looked at what's coming, seeing the new guys that are in the mix. I mentioned the numbers were announced today. Elias Lindholm will wear number 28. Max Jones will be rocking number 49. Mark Kastelic, number 47. That's Torrey Krug's old number, if you'll recall. Nikita Zadorov, 91. Mark Savard's old number. Riley Tufte will be number 10. And if you missed it, go back and check out my series from a couple years ago on who wore it best, where I looked at numbers 99 to 1. Obviously, there was no 99 for the Bruins, but who wore each number best. Number 49, Max Jones, of course, was worn by one of my favorite players, or a couple of my favorite players, actually. Rich Peverly, who I actually bumped into at the grocery store yesterday and may be coming back on the podcast soon, as well as Joey Juneau. 47, of course, Torrey Krug wore for 8 years with the Bruins. And number 70, have we had a number 70 in the past? 4 players. Yeah, Jesper Boqvist wore it this past season. Malcolm Subban and Tim Thomas wore it for 1 season in the past as well. When it comes to number 28, a bunch of players, most recently Derek Forbort, who wore it for the past few seasons. That's it for today's episode, my friends. I hope you all had a great week. I hope you are all taking care of yourselves, taking care of each other. And please do subscribe if you have not already to Locked On Boston Bruins, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your favorite team every single day.